She was the voice that could silence a stadium, the queen of genre-bending brilliance. But behind the spotlight, Linda Ronstadt was nurturing a long list of betrayals that cut deeper than any lyric she had sung. In this video, we look into the 7 musicians who crossed paths with Ronstadt in ways that left lasting scars. From backstage betrayals to public humiliations, these stories reveal the untold tensions in the world of rock and roll. Don Henley and the Eagles. Number 7. Don Henley and the Eagles. Before the Eagles packed arenas, they were just 2 anonymous musicians, Don Henley and Glenn Frey, looking to find a niche for themselves in Los Angeles. Everything changed when Linda Ronstadt called. In 1971, she was looking to take a backup band on the road and decided to give these 2 a shot. Henley played drums, sang harmonies. Frey played guitar. The lineup also included Randy Meisner and Bernie Leadon. That tour laid the foundation for one of the biggest rock bands in history, the Eagles. Ronstadt didn't just employ them. She gave them exposure, direction, and credibility. She was a rising star at the time, building a formidable reputation in country rock. The people in the industry were paying attention to who was in her band. She helped them make contacts, and by the end of the tour, Frey and Henley decided to strike out on their own and create their own group. Ronstadt even supported that decision. She didn't try holding them back. She let them go and even told record executives to check them out. The Eagles blew up overnight. By 1973, they had a hit with Take It Easy. Next came Desperado, One of These Nights, and Hotel California. While Ronstadt continued her successful solo career, the guys she helped launch became stadium giants. But things soured behind the scenes. Henley's attitude changed. Fame changed the tone. He reportedly became more controlling and dismissive of Ronstadt's approach to music. In an interview during the mid-70s, Henley made a subtle but pointed remark that Ronstadt's style was safe and too polished. For Ronstadt, who valued artistry and musical growth, that comment stung. She felt disrespected, not just because she gave him a chance, but because he overlooked the influence she had on the band's early sound. What truly caused a rift, though, was what happened offstage. Ronstadt discovered Henley had been using her name to access venues and events she was not part of. He allegedly demanded guest access to a tour she headlined, without her permission. When she found out, she revoked all his backstage credentials. From that point on, Henley was no longer welcome at any of her shows. Industry insiders said Ronstadt handled the issue quietly but firmly. She didn't call out Henley in the press. She didn't create drama. She simply cut ties. For someone who had built her brand on grace and professionalism, it was a line she rarely crossed. This time, though, she made an exception. Here's the insight most everyone just misses. Ronstadt was influential not just as a singer, but also as a behind-the-scenes force, particularly in honing talent. The Eagles, before they found their own voice, were tempered by Ronstadt's touring style, stage discipline, and vocal layering. Frey said later that watching her record vocals taught them about the value of harmony. That's an important part of what made the Eagles sound so iconic. But he never publicly acknowledged that influence. Instead, Henley seemed to distance himself. From those early days, perhaps in service of building the Eagles brand as self-sufficient and self-made. Ronstadt never asked for her due credit, but to those who knew the whole story, it was part of a pattern. Ronstadt's producer at the time, John Boylan, was responsible for bringing Frey and Henley into her orbit. The connection wasn't an accident. It was deliberate. Ronstadt wasn't some bystander or incidental presence in the creation of the Eagles. She was part of the bedrock. The way Henley then separated himself from that origin story felt like a quiet betrayal. The two rarely saw each other again after the fallout. Ronstadt continued changing, delving into opera, mariachi, and big band. Henley stayed with the classic rock formula and opted for a solo career. Both would be successful in their own right, but that early bond never was spoken again. Jim Morrison. Number 6. Jim Morrison's onstage antics. Jim Morrison was arrogant backstage and publicly mocked Linda Ronstadt, which eventually left a scar on their once promising relationship. It wasn't until 1968 that Linda Ronstadt finally found her way in the music business. The Stone Ponies, who had scored a hit with Different Drum, were the first band to bring her attention. During this rise, she met the lead singer of The Doors, Jim Morrison. The band was already known for their unpredictable shows and Morrison's wild behavior. The things that happened between them on stage, not what was planned, hurt their careers. In his hurry, Morrison attended a concert in which Ronstadt was the opener. Mid-song, he appeared from the wings, approached her, and pulled her toward him in full view of the audience. He even tried to kiss her on stage without warning. It was awkward, unprofessional, and completely uncalled for. Ronstadt stopped and stared in surprise. That moment made her look bad in front of thousands of people and spoiled the mood. It wasn't an act of spontaneity. Morrison acted out in a way that fit a pattern. By 1968, his drug and alcohol consumption was worsening, and he frequently caused disturbances at concerts. But this incident was unique for the involvement of another artist who would not participate in his onstage theatrics. Morrison treated Ronstadt more as a prop in his performance than as a friend. Ronstadt did not cause a scene in the backstage area following the show. People knew her for maintaining her composure in public. Still, sources close to her claimed that this really rattled her. While not much was said about it, her team made one thing clear. She would not be performing near Morrison again. She didn't need that kind of chaos as her career grew. The performance was only part of the problem. Weeks later, Morrison poured fuel on the fire. In a radio interview, he mocked Ronstadt as sweet but spineless. He said her music lacked fire, and she was a pushover who didn't defend herself. That was both rude and touchy at the same time. At the time, it came from someone much more famous and powerful. The remark spread, and Ronstadt's confidence dropped, but she still didn't answer publicly. In no way did she behave like that. Instead, she just continued to build her catalog and reputation one show at a time. At the same time, she had the Morrison moment, some might say, that changed how she conducted her business in the music business. And from then on, Ronstadt was much more aware of her stage presence and personal limits. She became much more discerning about the people she worked with, avoiding tours with musicians who had a reputation for acting out recklessly. This is the more crucial thing that few people knew. Ronstadt was getting respect in the business behind the scenes. To managers and producers, she wasn't just another young voice. She was a professional with long-term prospects. The Morrison event had some of those insiders pay more attention to her. They liked how she dealt with it. No drama, just distance. It made her feel good about living in a selfish world. Meanwhile, Morrison continued to spiral. He started drinking heavily, and the stage stumbling became worse. He died in less than 3 years at the age of 27. He put his stamp on rock history, but things that happened with Ronstadt remind us that, for all his brilliance, he was seriously flawed. It wasn't about his misbehavior per se. It was also the career of another artist, since he crossed lines that he should have never crossed. The event was viewed by Ronstadt more as a beginning rather than as doomsday. She continued, never focusing on drama. Not surprisingly, she grew as she was full of talent and worked hard. Morrison quickly quit, while Ronstadt went on to have decades-long careers. Number 5. Running off Neil Young. The middle of the 1970s were Linda Ronstadt's most famous years. Millions of copies.